I had a friend who's going through cancer treatment the natural way, suggest the book, The Plant Paradox. Whenever I mentioned that I was going to get that book, I had other friends having many conniption fits about the book and the author. So I thought once I got the book, I got it used. Once I got the book and kind of went through it, then I would do a review, let people know kind of what I think about it. And in the process, I was kind of surprised at some of the things that I read in the book compared to some of the things that I was seeing on the internet and that are supposedly in the author's interviews. So I'm looking forward to going into that today. Hi, I'm Dawnita, prairie-trail.com. I'm a fifth generation Oklahoma Panhandle pioneer, award-winning author and journalist. We live on a small farm in a 100-year-old farmhouse with a bunch of junk behind me, which is why I've got the screen thing on. I sew, knit, crochet. I make a lot of our clothing and household items. I enjoy making homemade gifts. And I connect modern pioneers with the past so that they can become more prepared and live more sustainably, weathering the dust storms of life with God's divine help. Today, let's see. I always struggle with doing the screen share thing. And hopefully my mouse will cooperate. The Plant Paradox, a review and common sense farming. Okay, as always, I'm going to start with a biblical perspective. Behold, I'm sending you out as sheep in the midst of wolves. So be as wise as serpents and as innocent as doves. So when we're talking about diet, health, all these kinds of things, we need to be careful because there is just so much information out there. And I don't care what it is, there is not a one size fits all scenario. Okay. So the sooner we can remember that, the better. The Plant Paradox is the book, The Hidden Dangers in Healthy Foods That Cause Disease and Weight Gain. Dr. Stephen R. Grundy, MD. This guy is kind of an interesting person. He was head of surgical, some such or other, at Loma Linda University. He's definitely a evolutionist. So we need to keep that in mind as we're considering this book. But there were a lot of interesting things that were just kind of a confirmation to me. I'm not going to say that I suggest the book one way or another. I'm, of course, not being paid for this review or anything like that, just something that I've decided to do. This friend of mine suggested it. She's going through the Gerson treatment with cancer treatment, and her brother, I think she said, suggested this book. The idea is lectins are bad, stay away from them, and don't eat anything with lectins. My dietitian friend, who you've maybe seen on this channel with me before, Debbie Hanyon, the homeschooling dietitian, she's a registered dietitian, and she's like, all lectins are not bad. Okay. And she was definitely one that was having conniption fits about some of the things that she was seeing online about this book. She was going to borrow this book and kind of go through some of the stuff with me. And whenever she does, we may update this and give a little bit more information. But because I'm sure she's got a lot more in-depth thoughts as to some of the principles here. So I want to start with food from the beginning. Okay. And the Lord God commanded man, saying, you may surely eat of every tree of the garden, but of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil you shall not eat, for in the day that you eat of it you shall surely die. Now, in Genesis 2 and throughout the Bible, a day, there's another place in the Bible that it says a day for the Lord is like 1,000 years and 1,000 years like a day. Okay. Everybody after the fall lived less than 1,000 years. Okay. Um, so, and he said to Adam, after Adam did what he wasn't supposed to do, he ate of that particular tree whenever he had all the other trees, including the tree of life that he could eat from. He ate from this particular tree. Of course, you tell a child not to do something, they're going to do it, right? They're going to try. Even after you've told them all of the other things that they can do, they're going to do the thing that they shouldn't, right? And God said to Adam, because you have listened to the voice of your wife and eaten of the tree of which I commanded you, you shall not eat of it. Cursed is the ground because of you, and pain you shall eat of it all the days of your life. Thorns and thistles it shall bring forth for you, and you shall eat the plants of the field. By the sweat of your face you shall eat bread till you return to the ground, for out of it you were taken, for you are dust, and to dust you shall return. Okay, so this mentions bread. And I haven't gone into like the Hebrew words and the Strong's Concordance here, but it's talking about the plants that he can eat and bread. And then in Genesis 9, every moving things that live, every moving thing that lives shall be food for you. As I gave you the green plants, I now give you everything. And this is after the flood, talking to Noah. But you shall not eat flesh with its life, that is, its blood. Okay, so we're not supposed to eat things with blood. Now, does that mean that every single living, creeping thing was okay to eat? And here, let's see, I kind of got these in bad order. That was Genesis 9. Back in Genesis 7, the Lord God said, go into the ark, and you and your household, and take 7 pairs of all the clean animals, the male and his mate, and a pair of the animals that are not clean, the male and his mate. Okay, so there were 7 pairs of all of the clean. So there's 14 of each clean animal. And only a pair of the unclean ones. So that means this right here, it was already established that you could go ahead and eat the clean animals. All right. He wasn't saying like every creepy little thing. So the clean and unclean animals is very specifically laid out in Leviticus. It's very simple. If it has a split hoof and chews the cud, it's clean. If it has fins and scales in the water, it's clean. And the birds, if it's not a scavenger bird and it flies, so no ostriches or emus, no eagles or that type of thing, quails, chickens we wonder about sometimes, but yeah, so it gives pretty specifically. And the bird part is where our family kind of not sure, but pigs have a split hoof but they don't chew the cud. Rabbits chew the cud but don't have a split hoof. Okay, so it's fairly simple. All right. And there are reasons for this. There's been a lot of research done. You can take it or leave it if you want to. about, how these bottom feeders and the cleaner uppers and the predators have more of a tendency to carry parasites and stuff like that because of what they eat. And one of the things that he said in the Plant Paradox book that I coined with was, you are what your food eats. So the idea is we want to eat clean animals that are basically eating vegetables, okay, fruits and vegetables, green things. So that's going to be important. So cattle, goats, sheep, they eat the grass, and the fish and the chickens are going to eat, grain and stuff, right? So it just kind of makes sense to me. That's common sense farming. We're going to eat the animals that eat clean. So that makes sense to me. Okay, the feast of the Lord, gut health, and yeast and parasite cleanses. Okay, he talks about several things in the book that aren't good for specific reasons. Okay, we've got chemicals, processing, GMO, all this stuff going on in our food these days, right? Does that mean the particular food is actually bad in a whole? No, it means that most of it that's available to you has problems. Okay, so the feasts of the Lord, and I have a whole Bible study for that. I'll link in the description. It's free for you guys to sign up for the newsletter and join me there. And it kind of gives, a layout and a basic on the feasts of the Lord and what that's about. Is something that Bible believers should be aware of, and that Yeshua, Jesus himself, followed. Okay. And in the feasts of the Lord, especially the spring feasts, you have the Feast of Unleavened Bread, which is a whole week cleanse, is basically what it is. No yeast and bitter herbs. Okay, so the no yeast is kind of a yeast cleanse. You're going without yeast. And then the bitter herbs would help clean up parasites. This is for your gut health. God knew that we were going to need that, right? So he fit it into the feasts for us. So it's good to have the proper probiotics, prebiotics, all this kind of stuff, in addition to food that is, has is packed with as much nutrition as possible. I mean, that's what we want. We want a healthy digestive system where we are utilizing and absorbing all of the nutrients that we need. And in this day and age, that's hard. Okay. So many people have digestive issues, and we don't eat the right stuff all the time. And as clean as we eat and as much clean food as we have available in our home, we still have issues. Okay. I still like some of my sugary store-bought cookies every once in a while. And, thankfully, I'm not dealing with cancer treatment, so I'm not having to completely cut a bunch of stuff out of my diet like my friend going through treatment is. But we're trying to live as close to God's design as possible. So this just makes sense, right? Okay. Ezekiel, and you take wheat and barley and beans and lentils and millet and emmer, and I left the little, I try to get all the little, if you go to BibleGateway.com, it's got that's what that is, a reference, and put them into a single vessel and make your bread from them. Okay, in this plant paradox, he is very much against wheat, barley, beans, lentils, most grains, and beans and lentils, except for certain situations. Okay, what were they doing with these grains and beans? All right, you can't just eat, or not very much. You can a little bit, but you can't just go out to the wheat field and just start eating a bunch of wheat. You can't live off of it. Let's put it that way. And beans, you can't just pick beans and just eat beans, right? They need to be, the beans need to be soaked and they need to be cooked for a period of time. And he even says the bad lectins that he's talking about and that he's researched in this book, are gone with a canning process, with the pressure cooking. So if they're pressure cooked, they're okay. So he's not saying you can't have beans and lentils. And I guess in some of his interviews and stuff, he says it physically. I don't know. I haven't listened to those. I'm not interested. I've got the book, and the book says that if beans and lentils are pressure cooked, they're fine. And then wheat, barley, millet, these grains, if they are sourdough, if they're fermented in like a sourdough scenario, then they're okay. So, you need to take the book in its context without all of the evolution, and then you can get down to the basics. This is what the Bible says, and I trust the Bible. So, what do you have to do these things to make it worse? So if they were putting them in a vessel to make bread out of them, our assumption, because there's Ezekiel bread you can get now, right? And it's based off of this Bible verse, and they sprout the grains before they make the bread. And so that would be part of the issue. He specifically says in the book that sprouted grains aren't good, but again, that's one of those things that I'm going to take with a grain of salt. And I really like Ezekiel bread, and I don't feel bad whenever I eat it. So there we go. And then Daniel said to the steward, because Daniel, Hananiah, Mishael, and which is Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, they were taken out of their land from their families and castrated and put to service for King Nebuchadnezzar. And the chief of the eunuchs wanted these new eunuchs to have, basically the king's diet, right? This really rich diet that was probably full of pork and who knows what else. And Daniel's like, hey, why don't you test your servants for 10 days and let us be given vegetables to eat and water to drink, and let our appearance and the appearance of the other youths who eat the king's food be observed by you, and deal with us accordingly. And at the end of it, Daniel, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego all looked better than the others. They looked healthier. So just to make sure that they were eating clean and they were honoring the Lord, they asked to be put on a vegetarian diet, and it worked out well for them. Matthew in the New Testament, therefore I tell you, do not be anxious about your life, what you will eat or what you will drink, nor about your body and what you will put on. Is not life more than food, and the body more than clothing? So the Lord is saying right here, Yeshua, Jesus is saying, don't worry about this stuff, right? Don't get anxious over it. Basically, it's not rocket science. It's simple. So let's put that basic common sense in there. And also he's saying here, the Lord will provide for you. You don't need to worry about these things, worrying about how you're going to put food on the table. And a lot of us do worry about those things sometimes, no matter how hard we might try not to. It's going to happen. The Lord's going to take care of us. We need to stand on that promise, right? Okay, Revelation. He who has an ear to hear, let him hear what the Spirit says to the churches. To the one who conquers, I will grant to eat of the tree of life, which is in the paradise of God. So the tree of life still exists, and it is in the paradise of God. Now, there's different ideas on where that is. He could have transplanted it in the kingdom upstairs, or maybe it's at the North Pole. There's different ideas there. I think it could be a little bit of both, but it's an interesting thought process, and we may go deeper into that sometime in a tin hat talk with some other ladies. But, you know, this is a wonderful promise that those who keep the word of the Lord and keep the commandments and conquer, you know, the things of this world will be granted to eat the tree of life, and we'll have eternal life, right? So we'll make sure your name is in that book, and so that we'll be there together. Okay, so food sacrifice to idols was something that I wanted to talk about. 1 Corinthians 8 and Revelation 2 both talk about food sacrifice to idols, and that we are not to eat of it. There have been every time, once in a while, I'll go to an ethnic restaurant and there will be an idol at the door or close to the door, and there will be food in plates sitting around it. That is food sacrificed to idols. That means that those people who have that restaurant are sacrificing food to idols. Use your discernment there. I'm not going to eat at a place like that. Okay. God bless those people and show them his truth, but I'm not going to eat there. So, it's just something the Lord has really laid on my heart. A lot of times it'll look something, I'm sorry, this is fuzzy, something similar to this, and there'll be food plates right there in front of it. And this was a really good article. Can Christians eat food sacrificed to idols? And I will leave this link below. I know nothing about this Amos Ministries, but the article was interesting. They've got a lot of other Bible verses about it, so I'll make sure that's in the comments. Vine ripened. He did kind of mention in the book about vine ripened, that the fruits and vegetables, a lot of times you will notice if you're growing some of your own, if you have a little garden of your own or a big garden, that the birds and even the trees, the fruit trees, excuse me, the birds and the bugs and stuff don't tend to want to eat the fruit or the vegetables until it's ripe. So you'll be waiting for those peaches on that tree. My husband, he's got this thing, this hate relationship with the blue jays. And he had this peach tree, and he loves peaches, and he would be looking so forward to the peaches. And I mean, just as soon as a peach ripened, the blue jays were out there eating it. They wouldn't before it was ripe, but just as soon as the fruit was ripening, the blue jays were in it. We had the same problem with the peacocks and the strawberries and the tomatoes. Just as soon as they start turning red, they're ready to eat them. The animals know that vine ripened is best. What this doctor, the author of the book, is saying is these lectins, I guess, are highest before the fruit or the vegetables are ripe. Once they ripen, then they're not as high. They either go away completely or they're just not as high. And so we need to, it makes sense. Okay. The animals don't want to eat unripe fruits and vegetables. We shouldn't eat unripe fruits and vegetables, right? Fermentation, preservation, and pickling. And this is one of the best videos that I have seen, Off Grid with Doug and Stacy. This was one that she did several years back, and I will have the link in the description. Fermenting for Dummies. It was wonderful. She showed exactly what she did. That's how I learned how to do sauerkraut, is this video right here. and our whole family now can do sauerkraut. So every once in a while, we will order a case of cabbage, um, broccoli, cauliflower, and we will do it all up together and make a big old batch of sauerkraut. And it's wonderful, absolutely wonderful. Fermenting processes pre-digest your food for you. Start the pre-digestion process so the food is easier for you to digest. So if you're eating sauerkraut or something that's lacto fermented or salt brine fermented, it's going to be easier for you to digest. So some of these fruits and vegetables that the plant paradox was saying supposedly aren't good, he also he did address that if they're fermented, that helps take care of this problem. Okay. So you don't have to avoid them altogether. And the Stacy will have a link, their affiliate link at the bottom of her video. So if you want to support them, they've got great information, but it's masontops.com. I got this complete fermenting kit. I also make sprouts and I use their tops. I've tried several different sprouting tray scenarios, and this is the best. This just works absolutely the best. It comes with 2 of these little sprouting lids to go on your jars. It works wonderful. So I suggest put those on your wish list, on your holiday list, on your, whatever, and try to come up with these at some point in time. Being able to ferment your own sauerkraut, make your own pickles, things like that, and making your own sprouts. Sprouts are a superfood. Just excellent. Okay. Definitely worth it. Doesn't take up a whole lot of space. And it's just wonderful. Sourdough, and I mentioned the sprouting with those little sprouting lids. Traditional cooking school also talks about, they've got this free, and I've got a link below, my affiliate link below, on her free how to start a sourdough starter. And she's got tons of information. She's also got information on sprouting grains. It's wonderful. Wordy has just done amazing things with this website. I definitely suggest checking her information out. I will be starting a sourdough starter here pretty soon so that I don't bake during the summer whenever it's hot. So that, this fall and winter and spring, I can be making sourdough bread. So, yeah, I definitely suggest checking that out. And we just need to use some common sense, right? Just thinking about how things are done now and what we're getting from the grocery store. One of the things in the book that he really stressed is eating the fruits and vegetables in the season that they, in season. So when they're usually ripe. So here later this month, beginning of next month, we'll be eating Colorado peaches. And this is the season, they'll be ripe. It's time for peaches. End of June, that's when, a lot of the cherries and plums and things like that are ripe. That's the season for those. Now, that doesn't mean that if you preserve them, that you can't have them the rest of the year. One of the things that he said in the book is whenever you are eating fruit, treat it like candy. Have, in moderation. It's a treat every once in a while, right? Not something you want to eat just all the time. It's a treat. So keeping that in mind makes sense. And then the meats, he wasn't completely against milk products. You can kind of think that, at first glance, but as he was talking about it, there's a difference between A1 and A2 milk. Farmers have been breeding for production, and certain milk cows, those pretty black and white milk cows, the Holsteins that you usually see pictures of for dairy cows, the bigger productions use the Holsteins because they are both a beef cow and a dairy cow. They can get a lot of milk out of them, and they can butcher the steers that come out of them. So a mama cow has calves. If she has a boy calf, that's going to be hamburger. If she has a girl calf, that's going to be a milker. And that's the way things work. You can't have a whole bunch of boy cows. It doesn't. They'll fight and stuff. It's not a good thing. So, somebody needs to eat it. So they use those because it's more economical to have cattle that are good for both beef and milk. The only problem with that is their milk isn't real high in milk fat, and it's a different level of milk. So there's an A1 and an A2, and one is more digestible than the other. Okay. So our daughter, one of our daughters, her and her husband have some miniature Jersey cows, and she's lactose, very, very lactose sensitive. And so they have the kind of milk that he suggests. And then, if you make yogurt, then again, you're doing a fermenting process, and the yogurt is going to help use up that, or kefir, if you do kefir, that's going to help pre-digest that lactose in there for you. So, and we have goats, and goats also are going to have more of the right kind of milk that's easier to digest for our system. And let's see, meat as well. Oh, we're really blessed out here that we can have grass-fed beef, locally grown beef, very well taken care of cattle. Every once in a while, some of the farmers that we buy from, they'll bring the cattle up closer to the house whenever they're getting close to butcher time, and they'll start feeding them some grain right there at the end, just to put on a little bit of fat and to kind of soften up the meat, so it's more tender, and that's great. I hate to go too much into the bigger corporate farms. When I say corporate farm, I'm not meaning a family corporation. I'm meaning a corporate owned corporation, very often owned by a foreign corporation. We have pigs out here, the big pig farms, and I have been slammed on social media for talking about them. But we have literally seen, if a pig gets out of one of those facilities, of course, they're on cement all of their lives. We know people who work there. They end up getting a lot of medication in order to keep them alive. If one gets out, they can't reintroduce it back to the building with the rest of them. They have to kill it. They kill it. So it is so unclean that nobody who lives within a mile radius of one of these huge pig farm buildings is supposed to own a pig, because it can cause disease back and forth within a mile. So you can't tell me that it's healthy. It's not. And even though these are on family-owned farmland, the farmer has no say about what goes on in these pig farms. So, my grandfather was a pig owner, pig farmer. He had a lot of pigs, but they had mud puddles to play in. They were on the ground. He would have his new mamas on cement, on a cement pad, just to keep it clean for the babies. And then they had a little house that would be full of hay, straw for them with their babies. And it was kept very clean, and they were fed and watered very good. And they had plenty of room for the mama and babies. And once the babies were ready to wean, the babies got to go out into a very large area, you know, and once they got bigger than that, then they got a bigger area, and they had lots of room to run and play. So that's how it should be. That is just totally and completely how it should be. Just, you know, we need to use common sense, right? Chickens, and he brings it up in the book that some of the bigger chicken farms, corporate chicken farms, that all, according to the FDA and USDA, all the chickens have to have is access to a small area of grass for 5 minutes a day, supposedly. It would not surprise me. I didn't double check. I didn't look that up. It would not surprise me. Our chickens are let out as long as the weather's, you know, not nasty. They're let out every morning, let run around free for the day, and then put back up at night to keep them safe from predators. Again, you know, I wouldn't want to be raised in a cage or on cement all of my life. So let's not do that with the animals, right? I'm not an animal rights activist or anything like that. I'm just trying to say common sense, people, common sense, right? And think about how these animals are being cared for. Most farmers and ranchers that I know, even ones that own thousands and thousands of acres, they love their animals and they take good care of them, and they worry and get upset and sad if one of their animals isn't feeling well or doing well. They do everything they possibly can to take good care of their animals. So that's the way it should be. And we should be supporting the small farmers and the large family owned farms as well. And just because a family has done an LLC or done an S Corp or a C Corp corporation type thing doesn't mean they're corporate. You know what I'm saying? It just means that they've done that for their family purposes, you know, and you need to really look at how their animals are taken care of and how much they care about their animals. So, if you can't raise your own stuff, then, you know, make friends with the local farmers. If you have a farmer's market, ask some of the farmers at the farmer's market if you can come out and see their facility, come out and see their animals sometime and see how they're doing things. And, you know, that would be a good way to do it. And just make sure that things are being raised the way you would like for them to be. What are you? Come on, come on. Now I'm gonna have to stop share. And then what just totally froze up on me. Okay, let's see if we can do this again. All right. I know I've got more than one. Well, two. Well, maybe that must have been the end of it. Okay, I thought I had more than that. All right, there we go. All right, so let's see what else. So I think I've covered it all, actually. Isn't that amazing? Yeah, I went through everything and I babbled and talked enough, I guess. So, Yeah, I will put a list of these Bible verses and the websites and stuff down below. And if you haven't subscribed to the magazine, yes, I am going to mention the magazine again. Pop up on over to prairie-trail.com and we have the magazine there at the top. If you can't afford that or you're not interested in the magazine, a little bit further down, I have my free newsletter, and that will let you know when I've got a new podcast up or videos and the occasional blog post. I don't send out very many emails, so you won't get like a whole lot. I'll have the Feast of the Lord Bible study also listed if you want to sign up for that. So remember, you can weather the dust storms of life with God's divine help. Bye-bye.